Welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely pumped to dive into this one because today is a special segment we're calling Forensic Friday. We are officially putting on our detective hats and stepping right into the shoes of failure analysis engineers. We're going to deconstruct exactly how, and more importantly, why the massive industrial machines we rely on every single day end up breaking down. And, as you'll see, we're going to learn how to read the hidden clues they leave behind. So let's kick things off with a pretty wild question. Why do massive solid steel machines just suddenly snap? I mean, you look at a heavy-duty power plant turbine or a giant construction crane, and they look completely invincible, right? They're built out of solid steel, designed by top-tier engineers, yet they still fail. And when they do, it's catastrophic. It usually feels like a sudden explosion out of nowhere. But here's the truth. It's actually a forensic mystery that's been unfolding quietly for months or sometimes even years. The culprit is usually the ultimate silent killer in engineering: fatigue. Think about a completely standard metal paperclip. If you grab it and try to pull it straight apart from end to end, it's incredibly strong, right? You can't break it. But if you just bend it back and forth a few times, snap, it breaks easily. That right there is cyclic fatigue. Now, in heavy industrial components, we aren't talking about large bends. We're talking about millions of tiny, microscopic bends and load changes over a machine's life. And it's mind-blowing, but this fatigue is responsible for roughly 90% of all component failures. Now, fatigue isn't just one thing. It actually comes in a few specific flavors. First up is thermal fatigue. This is a failure caused by rapid heating and cooling cycles, which is incredibly common in turbines and engines where temperatures are just fluctuating wildly. Then we have creep. Creep is the slow, permanent deformation of a material under constant mechanical stress, and it gets severely accelerated by high heat. Both of these are invisible structural threats. They're happening completely at the microscopic level, long before you'd ever spot a crack on the outside of the machine. Okay, let's dive into where the real design magic happens. I call it the geometry trap. In our forensic investigation, the actual weapon is often the object's own shape. When it comes to durability, sharpness is the absolute enemy. Sharp corners essentially create microscopic crime scenes where stress gathers and literally tries to tear the material apart. To really understand why, we just have to look at the basic math. When you have a solid, perfectly rectangular part under a pulling force, the stress is distributed totally evenly. It's just the force divided by the cross-sectional area. Simple. But the very second you add a discontinuity, like machining a hole right through the center for a bolt or a bearing, everything changes. You've disrupted the physical load path. The available area to carry the load drops, and the stress dramatically spikes in that one specific, localized area to compensate. Building on that, think about the notches and sharp steps you see on a typical industrial shaft. Any sudden change in geometry like that, whether it's a sharp interior corner or a keyway, acts as a stress raiser. Mathematically speaking, a perfectly sharp corner, one with a radius of 0, behaves exactly like a microscopic crack tip. As that radius shrinks closer and closer to 0, the local stress essentially tries to approach infinity. That means all the load concentrates right at that tiny point, which practically guarantees a localized failure. So how in the world do engineers calculate that danger? They use a vital tool known as the stress concentration factor. This is basically a mathematical multiplier. It measures exactly how much a geometric flaw, like a hole, a notch, or a sharp step, increases the normal stress right in its immediate vicinity. So if your baseline nominal stress is, say, 100 megapascals, but your stress concentration factor is a 3, well, that local corner is actually experiencing 300 megapascals of stress. If you run a finite element analysis, an FEA, on a stepped shaft under torsion, you can literally see this danger glow. It shows up as this vibrant red hotspot. The smooth part of the shaft is safely blue and green, handling the normal stress just fine. But right where the geometry suddenly steps up in size at the shoulder, the lines of stress physically pile up violently. That red ring is exactly where the material is screaming for relief. So the million-dollar question, how do we fix it? Well, engineers intentionally design parts using radiused or curved corners. A nice, large radius allows the load to redistribute and flow smoothly around the bend, which pulls that stress concentration factor way down from infinity to a manageable number. Now, a peak concentration still remains at the curve. You'd easily see it on a plotted stress graph, but it's now a peak the material can actually survive. But hey, what happens when the stress is just too high? and the material finally gives in. Let's shift gears to the tipping point. The fascinating thing here is that when a crack actually forms, it is rarely an immediate disaster. A machine doesn't just snap into pieces the second a microcrack appears. Instead, it enters a completely new phase of its life. And this brings us to another core concept: fracture toughness. Fracture toughness is simply a material's inherent ability to resist the growth of cracks once they've already started. It perfectly explains why some heavy-duty alloys can hold out for months or even years after a microscopic fracture has nucleated, while other, more brittle materials might shatter almost instantly. See, most of a component's fatigue life is consumed in a slow crack growth phase, which we call stage 1 and stage 2. In these stages, the crack creeps forward by incredibly tiny amounts, literally microns per cycle. It's stable. However, every single material has what is called a critical crack size. The exact moment the growing crack crosses that specific threshold, the remaining solid material just gives up. It can no longer support the load. All stability vanishes, rapid propagation takes over, and boom, you get a sudden, explosive, catastrophic fracture. Once the dust finally settles after that explosive fracture, the real investigation begins. Welcome to the autopsy. Every broken piece of metal essentially writes the story of its own demise straight across its fracture surface. It leaves all these physical, topographical clues about how it died. As failure analysts, we just have to know how to read them. During this autopsy, the very first thing we need to do is distinguish between an acute overload and a slow fatigue failure. An overload failure, it's fast, it's forceful, and it's obvious. If a machine jammed or took a massive impact, you'll see a fracture face that is rough, dimpled, and fibrous. You'll often even see chevron patterns pointing directly back to where the break started. Fatigue, on the other hand, is a slow burn. Because the crack faces rub together over thousands of cycles before the final break, the fatigue zone will actually look incredibly smooth, polished, and sometimes even discolored from fretting. And within that fatigue zone, you're going to find one of the most telling clues of all: beach marks. Just like the tide lines left on a sandy beach, these are macroscopic bands that literally trace the crack's slow advance. They are physical records of varying loads, machine start and stop cycles, and maintenance intervals that were happening over months and months before the final snap. Reading beach marks is honestly just like reading the rings of a tree. All right, so now that we know how to perform the autopsy on dead metal, we need to pivot to our defense system. As professionals, we really have to challenge ourselves to shift away from this reactive mindset of simply fixing broken things. We need to adopt a proactive, diagnostic mindset. We've got to catch these failure mechanisms while they are still in that slow, safe crack growth phase. Our primary lines of defense at the design and maintenance level are pretty straightforward, but absolutely critical. First things first, remove the notches. Polish your keyways, blend your thread runouts, and ensure large radiuses on all sharp corners to drop that stress concentration. Second, apply compressive surface stress. You can use techniques like shot peening or deep rolling, which literally squeeze the surface together to prevent cracks from ever opening up. And finally, significantly improve your lubrication and corrosion control. That prevents the micro pits that seed these cracks in the first place. But how do we check on machines that are currently out in the field without completely tearing them apart? We use high-tech non-destructive testing, or NDT. The diagnostic steps here are just amazing. We can start with ultrasonic A scans, literally shooting high-frequency sound waves into the metal to see internal voids or thickness loss that is completely invisible to the naked eye. Then, we can use acoustic emission sensors to detect the microscopic acoustic waves generated by internal crack growth. We can literally listen to a bearing scream in distress long before it physically seizes up. But here is the reality check. All the fancy sensors in the world can't solve everything. We always have to remember the human factor. You can have the absolute most perfectly designed power plant turbine, complete with perfectly radiused corners, shot-paned surfaces, and premium alloys. But if site management ignores the service intervals, allows structural misalignment to persist, or completely neglects proper lubrication routines, all that premium engineering gets bypassed entirely, and the machine will fail. Guaranteed. And this brings us to a final, somewhat provocative thought. Look at the equipment you manage, design, or operate. Are you truly monitoring its health using a diagnostic forensic mindset? Or are you honestly just waiting for the next failure to happen? Understanding fatigue and truly respecting the geometry trap gives you the power to prevent disasters before they even start. Oh, and by the way, I'd love to know,
Should we focus our next explainer on a specific type of machine? Like maybe we deconstruct a failure on massive construction cranes or dig deep into power plant turbines? Let me know. Thanks for joining me for this Forensic Friday explainer. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one.